I knew something was wrong the second I stepped off the plane in Toronto. My grandfather's driver, Mr. Thomas, was supposed to be waiting. He never missed an airport pickup in 25 years. But this time, no sign of him. Instead, a different car idled by the curb. A black Jaguar with tinted windows, my father's favorite brand. The driver, a stone-faced young man in a suit, stepped forward. "Your parents sent me," he said. I hadn't told them I was coming. My pulse ticked up, but I forced a smile, playing along. Of course. How thoughtful of them. The ride was silent, but tension coiled in my gut like a loaded spring. Toronto's skyline blurred past, neon reflecting off the rain-slick streets. I gripped my phone, half tempted to text my lawyer, but something told me to wait. When we pulled up to my family's old home, a 3-story villa in Rosedale, I expected warmth, nostalgia. Instead, it felt like stepping into an ambush. My mother, Sandra, sat at the dining table, sifting through paperwork like this was any other evening. My father, David, stood by the window, swirling a glass of scotch. Neither of them looked surprised to see me. "We need to talk," I said, skipping the pleasantries. My mother exhaled, setting down her pen. "We figured you'd show up sooner or later." I glanced around. "Where's Grandpa's factory? Why is it shut down?" My father sipped his drink. "Because it's no longer ours." His words hit like a gut punch. I stared at them, waiting for the joke, the explanation, but there was nothing. "You sold it," I said, my voice sharper than I intended. My mother barely blinked. "Yes, months ago. You were busy in New York, so we handled it." Handled it like they had thrown away an old pair of shoes. I took a slow breath, trying to stay calm. "It wasn't yours to sell." "Technically it was," my father said smoothly. "You inherited it, but we managed the business. It was failing. We did what was best." I forced a laugh. "Best for who?" No answer. I reached into my pocket, pulling out my grandfather's will, the original copy, notarized and sealed. I had read it a dozen times. My name was on every asset. My name was on the company. There was no clause allowing them to act on my behalf. I tossed the paper onto the table. "This says otherwise." My mother barely glanced at it. "You should speak to our lawyer." There it was, the deflection, the corporate maneuvering. I leaned in, voice low. "Fine, I'll talk to your lawyer. But I hope you realize something. If what you did was illegal, you're both going to lose a hell of a lot more than the factory." My father's expression darkened, but he said nothing. I turned on my heel, grabbed my coat, and walked out. The black Jaguar was still waiting, but this time I wasn't getting in. I had my own plans, and my lawyer had just found something they hadn't expected. I didn't go to their lawyer, not yet. That would have been playing their game, and I had no intention of walking into a rigged fight. Instead, I went to see Mr. Thomas. He was more than just my grandfather's driver. He was the closest thing to a confidant my grandfather, Arthur Vance, ever had. If anyone knew what had really happened to the factory, it was him. His apartment was in an older part of Toronto, tucked away in a quiet alley lined with lanterns. When he opened the door, his eyes widened. "I knew you would come," he said, stepping aside, "but I thought it would be sooner." That hit me like a slap. "You knew?" Mr. Thomas sighed, gesturing for me to sit. His place was small but spotless. Framed photos of my grandfather lined the walls. "I knew something was wrong the day they announced the sale. Your parents fired half the staff before the papers were even signed. No severance, no explanation." I clenched my jaw. "They made it seem like the business was failing." He continued. "That's what they told the workers. But that wasn't true." My chest tightened. How do you know? Mr. Thomas gave me a long look before standing up and crossing the room. He opened a cabinet, pulled out an old metal lockbox, and set it on the table between us. The key was already in the lock. He turned it. Inside was a stack of documents. I saved what I could, he said, handing me a folder, financial records, orders. The factory was turning a profit even in its final months. I flipped through the pages, my stomach sinking with every number. The factory hadn't been dying. It had been thriving. They wanted to sell it before you could take control, Mr. Thomas said quietly. I gritted my teeth. My parents hadn't just sold my inheritance. They had lied to my face about why. Who bought it? I asked. Mr. Thomas hesitated. That's where things get complicated. What do you mean? He handed me another paper. This one was different. A contract not for the sale, but for a partnership. I scanned the names and then I saw it. My father hadn't just sold the business. He had sold it to someone he owed money to. A name I recognized instantly. A name I never expected. Marcus Thorne, a well-known corporate raider in the city. I stood up, gripping the paper. I need to see this lawyer, I said. But now it wasn't just about taking back my factory. It was about finding out what the hell my father had got himself into. I didn't sleep that night. My mind spun, piecing together the betrayal like a shattered mirror. My parents hadn't just stolen from me. They had used my grandfather's life's work to settle a debt in the name on that contract. Marcus Thorne, a businessman on paper, a shark in reality. He didn't buy companies, he swallowed them. Then he gutted them for parts, rebranding the carcasses under his ever-growing empire. He didn't just want my grandfather's factory, he wanted his legacy, and my father had given it to him. By morning, I was sitting across from my parents' lawyer, Mr. Sun, in a glass-walled office in the heart of Toronto. He folded his hands on the table, smiling. Your parents informed me you had concerns. I dropped the contract onto his desk. This is my concern. His smile didn't waver. Ah, yes, the sale agreement. You mean the illegal sale agreement? His eyebrow twitched. The sale was completely above board. Then why does my grandfather's will say they couldn't sell it? I expected him to falter, to hesitate. Something. But instead he just sighed, like he was dealing with a child who didn't understand the rules. There was a clause in your grandfather's will, he admitted. But your parents acted under an emergency directive. The company was at risk. They had the legal right to... No, they didn't. I pulled out the copy of the will my lawyer had sent me the night before. Mr. Betrayal's son barely glanced at it. A will is subject to interpretation. I clenched my fists under the table. This was the game. Drag me into legal mud until I either drowned or gave up. Then he did something that made my blood boil. He smiled. Look, I understand you're upset, but your parents did what was necessary. I forced myself to breathe. Where's Marcus Thorne? That caught him off guard. Excuse me? I tapped the contract. This sale wasn't just a business move. My father owed Marcus money, didn't he? Silence. I had him. I want a meeting, I said. Mr. Sun scoffed. You think Marcus Thorne will meet with you? He will when he finds out my parents sold him something they didn't legally own. That wiped the smirk off his face. Do you have any idea who you're dealing with? He asked, his voice low. Yeah, I said. Do they? I walked out before he could answer. I wasn't just going to fight this. I was going to burn the whole damn thing down. I didn't wait for Mr. Sun to arrange a meeting. That would have given him time to spin the story, to warn my parents, to tighten their grip. No, I went straight to Marcus Thorne's headquarters myself. His office was in a sleek high-rise building overlooking the Don River. The kind of place where power wasn't flaunted, it was assumed. The receptionist barely glanced at me before saying, "Do you have an appointment?" "No," I said. "But tell him it's about the Toronto factory he just acquired." That got her attention. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. "He's not available," she said carefully. I smirked. "I'll wait." She opened her mouth to argue, but then something behind me shifted. The air changed. Footsteps controlled, deliberate. I turned. Marcus Thorne himself stood in the doorway of the executive lounge, watching me like I was a curiosity. He was younger than I expected, maybe late 40s, in a dark suit that probably cost more than my entire college tuition. "You have 5 minutes," he said. I followed him into his office, a cavernous room lined with floor-to-ceiling windows. The view screamed control. He gestured to a seat, but I didn't take it. "I'm here about the sale of my grandfather's factory," I said. He sat down, adjusting his cufflinks. "Your parents' factory," he corrected. I dropped the will onto his desk. "Mine." He glanced at it, then at me, unimpressed. "You came all this way to show me a piece of paper." "I came to tell you that the sale was fraudulent." That got his attention. His fingers drummed against the desk. "That's a serious accusation." "It's not an accusation, it's a fact." I leaned forward. "My parents had no legal right to sell it, which means you don't own it." A silence. Then he laughed, a slow, deliberate chuckle, like I had just told him the funniest joke in the world. "You think a will is going to stop me?" he said. I didn't blink. "I think a lawsuit will." He smirked. "Lawsuits take time, money, influence. I have all three. Do you?" I clenched my jaw. Then he tilted his head. "Your father didn't tell you, did he?" The hairs on my neck stood up. "Tell me what?" Marcus leaned back, watching me, enjoying this. "He didn't just sell the factory to pay off a debt. He offered it to me before he was even in trouble." My stomach dropped. I shook my head. "That doesn't make sense. The factory was profitable. Why would he—" Then I saw it. The truth hit me like a freight train. My father hadn't sold the factory because he had to. He had sold it because he wanted to. Because he never wanted me to have it in the first place. Marcus saw the realization dawn on my face and smiled. "This was never about debt," he said. "It was about keeping you out." I stood there, fists clenched, pulse roaring in my ears. Marcus folded his hands. "So tell me, now that you know the truth, what are you going to do?" I didn't have an answer. Not yet. But I damn well was going to find one. I walked out of Marcus Thorne's office feeling like the ground had been ripped out from under me. My father hadn't been forced into this deal. He had orchestrated it deliberately, methodically. He had chosen to strip me of my inheritance, to erase my grandfather's legacy, to make sure I was left with nothing. And Marcus Thorne? He was just playing his role, watching from the throne my father had practically gifted him. I gritted my teeth. No, not like this. I wasn't going to roll over and let them win. I needed leverage. By the time I reached Mr. Thomas's apartment, my head was pounding. I knocked twice before he opened the door, his eyes scanning my face. "You found something," he said. It wasn't a question. I stepped inside. Marcus told me the sale wasn't about debt. My father never wanted me to have the business. Mr. Thomas's jaw tightened. "Your grandfather suspected as much," he sighed, rubbing his temples. "He never told me outright, but he had his doubts about your father, said he was always looking for a way out, a way to turn the business into something it was never meant to be." I sank into the nearest chair. "Why didn't he say anything? He left it all in the will." I shook my head. The will wasn't enough. They sold it anyway. Mr. Thomas nodded gravely. Then, after a pause, he stood and walked to an old wooden cabinet. He pulled out a small locked box. "Your grandfather was careful," he said, handing it to me. I looked at the box. It was heavy, solid. I ran my fingers over the top and noticed something. His initials engraved in gold. "What's inside?" Mr. Thomas handed me a key. "The real insurance policy." I opened the box at a dimly lit cafe, away from prying eyes. Inside were several folders, neatly stacked, each one labeled in my grandfather's precise handwriting. I flipped through them. Bank statements, contracts, hand notes. And then I found it. A second contract, one that overrode the sale my parents had made. I scanned the document, my heart racing. It was signed, stamped, legally binding. My grandfather had anticipated this betrayal, and he had made sure there was a way to undo it. I gripped the paper, adrenaline surging through me. I finally had something real, something that could rip this whole deal apart. I grabbed my phone and called my lawyer. "Do you trust me?" I asked. A pause. Then, "Do you even have to ask?" "Good," I said. "Because we're about to start a war." I didn't go home that night. Home wasn't safe anymore. Instead, I checked into a small hotel near the river and spent hours poring over the documents my grandfather had left behind. My mind raced, fitting the pieces together. The real contract wasn't just a loophole. It was a landmine buried beneath everything my parents had done. Because my grandfather hadn't just left me the business. He had made sure that if anyone tried to sell it without my consent, the deal would be null and void. Legally, the company still belonged to me. I could undo everything. I just had to be willing to go all the way. The next morning, I walked into my parents' house like a man ready to burn the whole place down. My mother was in the sitting room, scrolling through her phone like she didn't have a care in the world. My father was by the window, drinking his usual morning coffee. They barely looked up when I entered. "I know what you did," I said, throwing the contract onto the coffee table. My father glanced at it, unimpressed. "Oh, another piece of paper." I stepped closer. "It's the piece of paper, the one that overrides the sale." That got his attention. His fingers tightened around the coffee cup. My mother finally looked up. "Where did you get this?" I smiled coldly. "From the one person you idiots forgot about. Grandpa himself." My father's face darkened. "You have no idea what you're getting yourself into." "No," I shot back. "You don't." I leaned in, lowering my voice. "I spoke to Marcus." That made my mother sit up straighter. I nodded. "Yeah, and you know what? He doesn't like being played." My father's jaw clenched. "What did you do?" he whispered. I smiled. "What you should have done. I made an offer." He shook his head, almost laughing. "You have no idea what you've just stepped into." "No," I shot back. "You don't." I leaned in. "Marcus and I have a deal now. He's backing me. The factory, it's mine again." A silence. Then my father's voice dropped. "You don't understand how business works." "Oh, I understand perfectly," I said. "I understand that you sold out your own father's legacy because you were afraid of being overshadowed." His jaw clenched, but he didn't deny it. I turned to my mother. "And you let him. You both did." I exhaled, letting the weight of it settle. "It's over. You lost." My father scoffed, trying to regain control. "You think Marcus Thorne is your friend? He'll chew you up and spit you out." I smirked. "Maybe, but at least I'm sitting at the table." He had nothing left to say. I finished my tea, set the cup down, and turned to leave. But before I walked out, I glanced back. "Oh, and one more thing," I added. "Marcus is sending someone over later. You might want to be home for that." My father's face went slack. My mother inhaled sharply. I didn't wait to see the fallout. I had a factory to run, one that needed a new architect. If you believe the truth will always find a way to the surface, hit the like button. And subscribe to Minister of Revenge for the next story of justice served cold.